Welcome to the deep dive. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself transported to ancient Crete, bathed in the Aegean sun, the scent of olive groves on the wind, the murmur of the sea ever present.
Hmm.
This is where our journey truly begins, on an island that gave birth to a civilization unlike any other in its time. The enigmatic Minoans.
hmm
Today we're embarking on a fascinating journey to the ancient Aegean, a place where the very foundations of Western mythology and religious beliefs were laid.
Yeah, it's fundamental stuff.
We're talking about the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations, two distinct yet, well, interconnected cultures that shaped what we now recognize as classical Greek mythology.
It's a truly captivating period, bridging the 3rd and 2nd millennia BC. And what's fascinating here is how we piece together their complex spiritual worlds from, well, archaeological whispers, really.
Whispers, yeah, especially when written records are scarce, or in the Minoan case, still undeciphered.
Exactly. So our mission today is to uncover the most important nuggets of knowledge from the sources, helping you understand how these ancient cults influence pretty much everything that came after in Greece.
We've sifted through a fascinating trove of historical accounts and archaeological discoveries for this deep dive, unearthing the most compelling threads that will hopefully allow you to see the roots of Greek mythology with new eyes.
Should be illuminating.
So, are you ready to travel back in time with us and see how gods and heroes first began to take shape?
Let's do it.
Indeed. With that broad canvas laid out, let's zoom in on the Minoans themselves, starting with their remarkable origins on Crete. The enigmatic Minoan civilization and its Earth-centric mythology. Our journey begins, as promised, on the beautiful island of Crete, home to the Minoan civilization, which flourished roughly between, 2700 and 1450 BC.
That's the time frame, yeah. And it's important, as you said, this wasn't just any ancient culture, named after the legendary King Minas.
Although that's a modern name, right? From the archaeologist Sir Arthur Evans.
Precisely. We don't know what they call themselves, but Minoan is the term we use. And they were an incredibly advanced maritime civilization.
Right. Their economy was heavily based on trade and seafaring, deeply intertwined with their island location.
Absolutely. Imagine a society where the rhythms of the sea dictated so much of life, influencing everything from daily sustenance to their whole worldview.
They weren't just sailors, they were masters of the sea.
They really were. And their influence, through their vast trade networks, extended across the Aegean, reaching Egypt, the Near East, and beyond.
That maritime prowess isn't just about trade, though, is it? It seems woven into the very fabric of their society.
It is. You see it reflected in the astounding sophistication of their grand palace complexes, centers like Knossos, Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros.
These huge, sprawling structures.
Huge, and they weren't merely administrative or residential hubs. The archaeological evidence undeniably points to them being vital religious centers as well.
So power and religion all mixed together.
It suggests a society where political power, economic activity, and spiritual life were deeply, almost inextricably integrated. The very heart of their society beat with a spiritual rhythm.
That's quite different from some later cultures where you see more separation.
Exactly. For the Minoans, it seems their everyday lives, their governance, their worship, it was all part of one grand, cohesive tapestry.
It's quite a vision, isn't it? Imagine a civilization built on the sea with intricate palaces that were also centers of worship. What kind of spirituality do you think emerges from such a culture?
Well, that's the key question. You can almost picture the elaborate ceremonies unfolding within those sprawling complexes.
Tying the people to their environment and their beliefs in a fundamental way, it makes you wonder about their connection to the land and the sea.
Well, that leads us directly to the foundations of Minoan religion. It stands out for its strong polytheistic nature, but critically, it was deeply mother goddess-centric.
Mother goddess-centric. That's a really significant divergence from later traditions, isn't it? Like the male-dominated Olympian pantheon.
Absolutely. Their belief system was profoundly intertwined with nature, focusing heavily on fertility. It was rooted in the cycles of nature. The turning of seasons, the growth of crops,
The sacredness of the earth itself.
and the animals that inhabited it. The mother goddess was central, symbolizing fertility, life, and that cyclical nature of death and rebirth.
She was the nurturing force, providing the bounty of the earth.
Exactly. Sustaining life, a direct reflection of their agrarian and island existence.
And this emphasis on a mother goddess rather than a male sky god feels incredibly distinct. But without explicit religious texts, how confident are we in interpreting their spiritual landscape?
That is the core challenge.
Are there any major academic debates around this mother goddess interpretation? It's not like they left behind, reams of religious texts.
Right. That raises the important question. How do we understand their religion directly when the linear A script they used remains undeciphered?
Still incorrect. The archaeologist's holy grail right there.
Stubbornly guarded, yeah. So our knowledge comes almost entirely from archaeological findings. Those intricate frescoes on the palace walls.
The little sculptures found in sacred spaces.
Other material remains like pottery, seals, ritual objects. This makes interpretation both challenging and, as you said, fascinating.
It's like detective work.
It really is.
Right.
We're essentially trying to reconstruct a complex belief system from visual clues, iconography, and the context of their discovery, rather than direct doctrinal texts.
It's like trying to understand a complex novel by only looking at the illustrations.
Yeah, or studying the library it's housed in, and comparing it to other novels you can read. It gives you a strong sense, but the full, nuanced story remains elusive.
And that contrasts sharply with cultures that left extensive written religious texts.
Oh, absolutely. Like the Egyptians with their hymns and spells, or the later Greeks with their detailed myths and plays. We have explicit narratives and prayers there.
So this limitation profoundly shapes our understanding. It's more inferential, maybe more open to debate.
Definitely. Open to ongoing scholarly debate, with new interpretations emerging as more evidence is unearthed.
Okay, so as we delve deeper, one of the most compelling figures to emerge is the mother goddess. But it's her enigmatic companion, the snake goddess, that truly sparks my curiosity.
Ah, yes, the snake goddess.
What do these small figures holding serpents tell us about how Minoans perceived nature's more mysterious, even dangerous aspects?
Well, the mother goddess is directly associated with fertility and the bounty of nature, often depicted with symbols of agricultural abundance or animals. She's undeniably the giver of life, the protector.
Right, often shown in poses of command or reverence.
But the snake goddess appears in those distinctive small bronze or ceramic figures, typically holding snakes in her outstretched hands.
Sometimes with a bare breast.
Yes, emphasizing her chthonic, sort of underworld and fertility aspects. And the symbolism of the snake itself is incredibly rich. It goes far beyond just a creature.
What did it represent? The underworld.
It represented the underworld. Yeah, connecting the Minoans to the mysteries beneath the earth, the fertile depths. It symbolized the potent, sometimes dangerous forces of nature, that untamed primordial power.
And snakes shed their skin.
Exactly. So, importantly, they were seen as powerful symbols of rebirth, renewal, and even immortality, that continuous cycle of life overcoming death.
So not necessarily figures of fear, but reverence. Manifestations of nature's sacred powers.
Clearly seen that way, yes. Embodying both life-giving and destructive potential. They weren't just animals. They were living conduits to the divine forces of the earth.
It's incredible to think about how these figures, especially the mother goddess, were seen as providing Earth's fertility, sustaining life, protecting the kingdom and society.
They weren't just abstract deities. They were seen as active, immanent forces in daily life.
And their prevalence in small statues found in homes and shrines and on palace walls through frescoes, it shows how central they were, right? Permeating everything.
Absolutely. Which leads to that question. What is the prominence of a female deity, often depicted with powerful natural symbols like snakes and doves, suggest about the Minoans' worldview?
Does it hint at a more egalitarian society, perhaps? Or just a profound reverence for the generative power of the feminine?
That's a fascinating question, and one that sparks much debate. While we can't definitively conclude a matriarchal society,
We don't have the evidence for that.
no. But the prominence of female deities certainly suggests a deep reverence for the generative aspects of nature, reflecting perhaps a more balanced, maybe even harmonious connection to the earth and its cycles.
A deeply animistic worldview, where the divine is in the world, not separate from it.
Exactly. Immanent force, woven into the fabric of the natural world in the rustle of leaves, the flow of water, the ground beneath their feet. Very different from later Greek ideas of gods dwelling on Olympus.
Right, this highlights the Minoans' intimate, lived connection to their environment. Divinity as present, tangible. This raises an important question, then. How did their reverence for nature manifest in their daily religious practices? It seems the animal cult, particularly the bull, was absolutely paramount.
Paramount is the right word. Animals were considered sacred, with the bull holding exceptional significance. symbol of power, fertility, abundance.
You can see how an agricultural society would revere such a powerful creature.
Absolutely. Its sheer size and strength made it an undeniable force of nature. But it wasn't just the bull.
Oh, what other animals were important?
Well, the breadth of their animal veneration was quite extensive. While the bull was primary, other sacred animals like the vulture,
Vultures, interesting. What would they represent?
often depicted in funerary contexts, so maybe associated with death and rebirth or a connection to the sky. Then there's the lion, a classic symbol of power and royalty.
And birds, I think I've seen doves on some artifacts.
Yes, various birds, especially doves, linked perhaps to air and divinity. It all shows this deeply integrated worldview, where the divine was perceived to be present within the natural world.
And this is where we get the famous bull leaping ritual, right? Depicted in those vibrant frescoes.
The iconic ones, yeah.
We see young individuals, often both male and female, vaulting over or clinging to the bull's horns. It's truly a breathtaking image, full of dynamism and danger.
It really is.
When you see these depictions, it's easy to imagine it as a spectacular public event, maybe even entertainment. But what are the interpretations? Purely religious? Something more?
It's a powerful image, no doubt. It's widely interpreted as a religious offering, a dangerous, awe-inspiring act performed for the gods, perhaps to harness the bull's power or demonstrate human mastery over nature's forces.
But also maybe a coming-of-age ceremony?
That's strongly suggested too, yeah. A test of courage and skill that marked their transition into adulthood, proving their strength and bravery to the community.
So it could have been both, ritual and rite of passage rolled into one.
It could very well have been both, serving multiple purposes within their spiritual and social fabric, weaving together ritual, bravery, and community identity.
How might such a dangerous and awe-inspiring ritual have shaped the identity of Minoan youth or their connection to the divine?
Well, such a perilous ritual would undoubtedly forge a strong sense of identity, connecting these young individuals directly to the divine through a shared, intense experience.
It speaks to a society that embraced risk, maybe? Celebrated strength in the face of natural power.
Possibly. Perhaps even believing that by confronting such a force, they were aligning themselves with the raw energy of creation itself.
That's truly fascinating, and this cult's lasting legacy is profound. The bull's importance later evolved into the myth of the Minotaur.
Right, the half-human, half-bull creature trapped in the labyrinth beneath the Knossos Palace.
It's a darker transformation, isn't it? From revered symbol to monster.
It is. While the bull was originally revered for power and fertility, its transformation into the Minotaur in later Greek myth hints at a fascinating cultural shift.
Was it the mainland Greeks' interpretation of a once sacred, perhaps intimidating Minoan ritual, turning a symbol of power into monstrous chaos?
That seems likely. Confined to a labyrinth, which was, to them, perhaps the bewildering complexity of Knossos Palace itself.
So it's not just an echo, it's a reshaping of a powerful symbol through a new cultural lens.
A crucial point about cultural reinterpretation. Now, shifting to their religious spaces, unlike many later civilizations, the Minoans didn't build freestanding temples like, say, the Parthenon.
No big temples on hills.
Not in the same way. Instead, their palaces were at the very heart of their religious life. Religious rituals were primarily conducted within the palace complexes. Knossos Palace served as a central hub for these activities.
And the palace's complex layout, the labyrinth, was itself sacred.
It seems so. Imbued with mythological and sacred significance, perhaps reflecting the complexity of their beliefs or the spiritual journey one undertakes to reach the divine.
So the entire architectural masterpiece was part of the sacred experience. That's remarkable.
It appears that way.
Can we get a sense of what typical Minoan rituals were like within these settings? What would a participant experience?
Yes, the palace itself would have amplified the sacred experience. Its intricate pathways, perhaps designed to evoke a sense of spiritual journey or initiation.
And the rituals themselves. Offerings.
We can infer typical Minoan rituals involved various practices. Offerings were common, often food or precious goods like pottery, bronze vessels, even gold, made to the deities at specific altars or sacred rooms.
Any open-air ceremonies?
Yes, especially those tied to nature's cycles like harvest or planting, often conducted in sacred groves or on peak sanctuaries, those mountaintop shrines.
And sacrifices, animal sacrifices.
Animal sacrifices, particularly of cattle and sheep, were likely part of these, accompanied by what we can infer were ceremonial dances and music, perhaps flutes, lyres, rhythmic drumming.
So a very multi-sensory experience.
Exactly, immersing participants in the sacred, blurring the lines between daily life and religious devotion. The abundance of snake goddess figurines, frescoes depicting rituals, other decorations, they vividly illustrate the symbolic richness of their rituals and sacred spaces. It shows us a lived religion, not just abstract beliefs.
So, what does this all mean for Minoan mythology as a whole? It's clear it's deeply intertwined with the cycles of nature, life, and death.
Absolutely.
The mother goddess is clearly the central, nurturing, protective force, guiding the rhythms of life, providing abundance.
She is. And their deities were largely personified reflections of natural powers and animals, reinforcing that profound connection to the earth and its immanent divinity.
And despite the direct textual limitations, the undeciphered linear A,
Right.
Minoan mythology formed foundational elements for pre-Homeric Greek mythology. It laid some of the earliest groundwork.
Particularly the idea of powerful female deities and the sacredness of certain animals. But it's important to reiterate, our understanding comes almost entirely from archaeological discoveries.
Meaning interpretations are continually evolving.
Exactly. It's a vast, intricate puzzle we're still piecing together, relying on meticulous interpretation of every fragment unearthed. 2. The ascendant Mycenaean civilization and its anthropomorphic pantheon.
Okay, so as the Minoan influence waned, likely due to a combination of factors, maybe natural disasters, internal strife, perhaps invasions.
The Thera eruption is often implicated, though the exact timeline and impact are debated.
Right. A new power emerged on the Greek mainland, the Mycenaean civilization. They carried the torch of age and culture, but with their own distinct martial flavor.
Very distinct. The Mycenaeans flourished from roughly 1600 to 1100 BC, primarily in the Peloponnese region, mainland Greece, with formidable strongholds like Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos.
Instantly, you get a different feeling from their fortified citadels compared to the open, often unwalled Minoan palaces.
That contrast is crucial. It reflects a fundamental difference in their societal priorities and, well, the external threats they faced. Their societal structure screams emphasis on warfare.
You see it in their fortifications, the massive, unmortared cyclopean walls of Mycenaean Tiryns.
Stones so huge, later Greeks believed only giants, the Cyclopes, could have moved them. It paints a picture of a society built on defense and military strength.
A far cry from the largely peaceful Minoans, it seems.
It seems that way. And the weaponry found in their elaborate shaft graves, those gold-hilted daggers, it all emphasizes their martial culture. But perhaps the most significant difference for our understanding of their religion.
Is that they left behind deciphered written records in Linear B.
Exactly. That is a game changer for archaeologists and historians. We have their administrative texts, their cult records.
Which brings us to their religion. What's fascinating here is how the divine landscape shifted. In Mycenaean religion, we see a crucial development. Gods become more anthropomorphic.
Yes, gaining distinctly human-like qualities and personal attributes.
They look like us, they have emotions like us, jealousy, anger, love. They interact with each other in very human ways. Divine family drama begins.
Precisely. And this anthropomorphic tendency laid the direct groundwork for the classical Greek pantheon we're all familiar with.
The prototypes of the Olympians start appearing.
Clearly, often mentioned on linear B tablets in connection with offerings. For instance, Zeus, the sky god, wielder of thunder, his cult was growing. He was already emerging as a symbol of universal authority.
Do the tablets mention him by name?
They mention offerings to Dio, which is Zeus, and his female counterpart, Dibija. His role as chief god was clearly solidifying, though maybe less morally complex than his later Homeric portrayal.
So he's already the big boss, even then. And who else was showing up on these tablets?
Very much the big boss. And then there's Poseidon, god of the sea, earthquakes, horses. He appears frequently, sometimes even receiving large offerings of land.
Suggesting he might have been even more prominent than Zeus in some places, like Pylos.
Possibly, yeah. His importance was significant, given their maritime life and the earthquakes in the region. A force to be reckoned with.
And Hera.
Hera, too, appears as Potinija, which means Podnia or mistress, revered as the goddess of marriage, childbirth, family, already taking on that domestic yet powerful role.
So the core Olympians are starting to form. Any others?
We also see the developing cults of other significant deities like Ares, Athena, Apollo mentioned in various contexts. It indicates a growing, structured pantheon, quite different from the more diffuse nature focus of Minoans.
And this humanization of the gods, does it reflect a changing worldview?
It might, yeah. Perhaps one where human actions, achievements, heroism take on greater significance in interaction with the divine. It's as if humanity is starting to see itself reflected in the heavens. The gods become more relatable, albeit still vastly powerful.
Beyond the gods, the Mycenaean world was absolutely brimming with heroic tales and epic narratives. This is where the legends we know so well truly began to take shape.
Oh, absolutely. Mycenaean mythology is rich in heroic figures like Agamemnon,
King of Mycenae, leader of the Greeks at Troy.
Menelaus, king of Sparta, Helen's husband, Odysseus, the skilled archer, Perseus, slayer of Medusa, Heracles, the ultimate strongman hero.
And these heroes interact with the gods constantly, right? Getting help, facing obstacles.
Yes, making the divine part of their human struggle, shaping their destinies. And these figures embody the core themes of their epics: war, honor, the pursuit of Kleos.
Kleos, that immortal glory achieved through great deeds.
Exactly. And individual heroism, often involving complex moral choices. They weren't just strong warriors, but also cunning leaders, strategists, figures of immense pride and often tragic flaws.
So these weren't just campfire stories, they were foundational to their cultural identity.
Foundational, yes, serving as moral exemplars, embodying the virtues of their warrior society. What does it tell us about a society when its foundational myths are filled with warrior heroes striving for glory and immortality?
It speaks to a culture that valued courage, martial prowess, a lasting legacy.
Above all else, yeah.
Yeah.
Deeply ingrained in their societal structure. And of course, these heroic narratives were later immortalized and codified in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey.
Highlighting that direct lineage from Mycenaean oral traditions passed down by bards to the classical Greek literary masterpieces.
Absolutely. Which brings us to how we know about their practices.
Right, those written records again. Linear B.
It's key. Mycenaean temples were typically built adjacent to palace complexes, creating integrated religious and administrative centers.
Sites for sacrifice ceremonies, festivals, divination.
All of that, seeking guidance from the gods. And Linear B gives us the details. We can see the types of animal sacrifices, cattle and sheep, mainly,
Okay.
offered to the gods, much like later Greeks.
Not just simple offerings, but public rituals.
Elaborate public rituals that cemented community bonds and expressed piety. But crucially, the significance of Linear B, it provides invaluable written information.
Unlike the Minoan Linear A.
Right. Linear B is deciphered, so we get names of gods, specific rituals. The inscriptions are often administrative records of offerings made in temples.
Like receipts for the gods.
In a way, yeah. Detailing who offered what to which deity and when. Lists of cult personnel, details about religious festivals.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A tablet from Pylos records offerings of oil and wine to various deities, including Poseidon, Hermes, and a goddess named Karosija, possibly an early form of Hera or Demeter.
Wow, so it offers a remarkably clear window into their religious structure.
Much clearer than just inference. We get actual recorded details. This direct access allows us to ask and answer much more specific questions about their pantheon and rituals compared to the interpretive nature of Minoan studies.
We see who they worshipped, what they offered, where they did it, with a precision largely unmatched for this period.
Exactly.
So if we sum up Mycenaean mythology, it's defined by its anthropomorphic gods, its tales of heroism, and that strong undercurrent of warrior culture.
That sums it up well.
This mythology is the direct ancestor of later Greek religion and mythology. Their gods possess human-like characteristics and reflect the religious hierarchy and values of their society, powerful leaders, warriors. It's the birth of Olympus, essentially.
The major players are already on stage, yes.
Three.
A tale of two cults, comparing Minoan and Mycenaean religious structures, zooming out a bit. Though geographically close and interacting through trade, sometimes conquest, the Minoan and Mycenaean civilizations developed strikingly distinct religious frameworks.
They really did.
And what this implies on a larger scale is how diverse belief systems can emerge even within a shared cultural sphere, profoundly influenced by different societal priorities, environments, even the threats they faced.
It's quite striking when you put them side by side. Minoan religion, primarily centered on nature and fertility cults, deeply rooted in the island's natural cycles, agricultural bounty.
The powerful mother goddess, the enigmatic snake goddess, the bull as paramount sacred animal.
Rituals often open air or within palace complexes, tying directly to land, sea, the cyclical nature of life. It felt very connected to the inherent powers of the world.
Conversely, Mycenaean religion focused more on those anthropomorphic divine figures, gods who looked and acted like humans.
And heroic themes celebrating valor, military strength, the pursuit of individual glory.
Exactly. Their pantheon included early versions of Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, pillars of the later Olympian system. While the bull was still present in some imagery, its symbolic emphasis shifted,
And the heroic narrative became much more prominent.
reflecting a society deeply engaged in warfare and conquest. This differing focus on the divine directly reflects their societal structures.
A seemingly more peaceful, perhaps more egalitarian, nature-focused Minoan society versus a hierarchical, centralized, and undeniably warlike Mycenaean society.
That seems to be the picture, yes.
And then there's the monumental difference in how we know about them. The Minoans used linear A,
Undeciphered.
meaning our knowledge is based on meticulous interpretation of artifacts, frescoes, archaeological context. It's like listening to a complex symphony without the program notes.
You get the emotion, the structure, but the specific narrative details remain elusive, open to scholarly debate, continuous reevaluation.
But the Mycenaeans, using linear B,
Provided us with deciphered written records, administrative lists, inventories, cult records.
offering clearer, more extensive written insights into their religious practices, specific names of deities, even details of offerings and cult personnel.
This difference in sources profoundly impacts our ability to understand each culture's spiritual life. We have a much more direct, textual window into the Mycenaean world.
Allowing us to ask and answer much more specific questions about their pantheon and rituals.
Right. So what might these differing religious focuses tell us about the societal priorities or anxieties of each civilization?
Well, the Minoans, perhaps more concerned with sustaining life, ensuring natural abundance, focused on benevolent, cyclical earth goddesses.
Plausible. While the Mycenaeans, a warrior society, focused on order, power, the challenges of a human-centric world, where powerful, often temperamental, human-like gods mirror their own complex social hierarchies and conflicts. 4. The enduring legacy. How ancient cults forged classical Greek mythology.
Okay, this is where it all ties together. The Minoan and Mycenaean mythologies are absolutely critical as the foundational building blocks for classical Greek mythology, the stories we know so well.
Absolutely. It's not just influence. It's a direct evolutionary path, a continuous thread woven through time.
What's fascinating here is the direct line we can draw from these earlier cultures to the familiar narratives of ancient Greece.
It's like seeing the raw ingredients that were later cooked into a magnificent feast, still retaining the flavors of their origins.
Yeah.
Let's look at some direct examples.
Go on. The Minotaur.
The Minoan bull cult, with its emphasis on the sacred, powerful bull, directly evolved into the Minotaur legend. The terrifying half-human, half-bull creature imprisoned in the Knossos labyrinth.
That transformation from revered animal to monstrous beast.
Highlights that significant cultural reinterpretation, where the awe of the bull was twisted into fear and punishment by a new dominant culture.
And the powerful female figures from Crete, the mother goddess, the snake goddess, how did they manifest later?
Yes, the Minoan mother goddess figure served as a clear precursor to later Greek fertility goddesses like Demeter,
Goddess of the harvest.
and her daughter Persephone, who embodies the cycle of life, death, and rebirth. The Minoan concept of a powerful, life-giving female deity connected directly to the earth and its cycles provided the archetype.
The idea of the earth as a divine, nurturing entity carried right through.
It certainly seems so, into the classical Greek worldview.
And the gods of Olympus themselves, Zeus, Poseidon.
The anthropomorphic gods of the Mycenaeans were the direct prototypes. Zeus, Poseidon, Hera, Athena, Ares, Apollo. Their names and basic attributes, as we saw recorded in Linear B.
They were already established back then.
Already established in the Mycenaean period, they simply matured, gained more elaborate stories, domains, complex family dynamics as Greek civilization developed. It's not an invention. It's direct inheritance and continuous evolution.
Homer and later poets just refined and expanded upon these already well-established figures.
Essentially, yes.
And finally, the epic tales of the Trojan War. Odysseus's long journey home, their Mycenaean foundation.
The culture of heroism and epic storytelling from the Mycenaean period directly shaped and culminated in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey.
The Mycenaean values of honor, glory, kleos, martial prowess.
Embodied by heroes like Agamemnon and Achilles, were transmitted through generations of oral tradition by bards. These foundational sagas were later solidified by Homer into those literary masterpieces.
So it was an evolution of existing sagas, not a sudden creation by Homer, more like a monumental poetic codification.
Exactly. Of stories that had lived for centuries in the collective memory of the age and world.
So these cultural and religious structures played a truly critical role in shaping Greek religious practices, rituals, cultural identity for millennia. It wasn't just influence, it was a direct inheritance, evolution.
A continuous thread.
It's truly amazing to see how deeply ingrained these ancient roots are in something we often think of as a distinct classical period, as if it sprang fully formed from the head of Zeus.
Right.
Think about your favorite Greek myth. How much of it, you might now realize, has its roots in these ancient worlds. The labyrinth, the powerful earth goddesses, the very names of the gods, the heroes striving against divine will or with divine aid, it all started here, in the sun-drenched palaces of Crete and the fortified citadels of mainland Greece. The conclusion. So, what does this all mean? The Minoan and Mycenaean mythologies represent a truly pivotal phase in the development of human belief systems.
They really do.
They show us how complex ideas about the divine, about humanity's place in the world, about the afterlife, began to take shape from distinct cultural priorities.
Precisely. The Minoans' nature-focused, mother goddess-centric, mystical, symbolic religion, combined with the Mycenaeans' anthropomorphic gods and hero-based religion, together formed the bedrock upon which classical Greek mythology was built.
A testament to how cultures adapt, interpret, and transmit their core beliefs through time.
It really is. And this raises an important question for us, even today.
Consider how these ancient themes, the veneration of nature, the humanization of the divine, the valorization of heroism, the constant tension between chaos and order, how they continue to resonate.
In our stories, our spiritual perspectives, our understanding of what it means to be human thousands of years later.
What enduring human needs or desires do these ancient myths speak to, even today? Whether we're talking about environmental stewardship, the search for meaning in human relationships, or that timeless pursuit of glory and self-understanding.
They really remind us that the fundamental questions of existence are far older than we often imagine.